you're Chris Chan.
Yeah.
And you're from Dwello. So what's Dwello? Tell us a little bit about what it is, like in a couple of sentences.
Yeah, so how we started was we wanted to be a payment processor and help people get rid of checks
Okay.
for paying rent. That was the initial
Yes,
thing.
I want that too.
Yeah, so when we started off, that was the initial idea. Now we want to take it to another step and provide some intelligence and some backbone behind paying rent so that it's a little bit more rewarding than just paying rent by itself, both for the landlord and for the tenant.
Yes, and so on the surface, this sounds like that. This is what I notice about a lot of fintech companies: is the concept. When you look at it from above, it looks so simple,
Yeah.
and everybody's like, I could have thought of that. Why didn't I think of that?
Right.
Maybe you could think of it, but maybe they wouldn't know how to do it.
Right.
But why this instead of just about anything else?
I think it was just one of those pain points. I ran an office before and was renting apartments out in university.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends are still like running around delivering checks every single month.
Really?
And I worked when I was first worked at a call center, even like decades ago now, but a while ago, everybody was still like mailing and sending around checks and people losing checks and always having that I have my check in the mail type of thing, that
Yeah.
excuse. And I find that that's one of those things that just are really, really antiquated.
One of the things I hate more than bank fees is paper.
Yeah.
I don't have any paper on my desk
Yeah.
at work. Everything can be done online, even signatures.
Yeah.
We'll print off the odd thing to put signatures on it, but really we should just have tablets
Right.
with pens to write on them,
Right.
right? So we still have checks. Checks are they've been just floating around and then they'll never go away, it seems. Why is that, do you think?
I think it's stuck in a old banking system where we don't have standards to deliver information from one institution to another that's standardized and usable throughout every Canadian banking institution. Even though we have ways of consolidating payments electronically, it's just this one physical last physical stalwart of things that people are hanging on to because it is a physical record of a particular transaction. And for whatever reason, that makes people more. It's just like receipts that come out of a ATM right now.
Yeah.
Right. It's just that one thing that people use to file away, to put in a credenza somewhere that they still hang on to, and checks are just that part that still hangs on. I know that in small towns they use it a little bit more often for paying for groceries, but in urban centers
They still do that? They still take checks at the grocery store?
yeah. So it's a small grocery stores. Yeah.
Sure.
Personal checks
Maybe they
and-
know you.
Yeah, if they know you and all that. But I mean, it's just this. For rent, it's just the last thing that we're still.
Is it a generational thing? Is it the previous generation is hanging on to this stuff and we're going along because they're the landlords, say?
I think part of it is landlords do like the idea of that physical record. It's the physical receipt and all that. Even though we're working on digitizing all of that, it's still that physical record that the previous generation really likes to hang on to. And there just hasn't been a push enough for people to want to change.
Because in my head, a physical record, as I've already flipped it, it's a PDF. That's what a physical record is to me.
Right.
So if somebody's like, give me the backup for that, I'm emailing them a PDF, even if it's the government.
Right.
Because guess what? I don't have the physical copy. I do probably in a drawer somewhere, but as
Right.
soon as I scanned it and organized it, now it's actually organized. Before, it was a piece of paper that was cumbersome.
Right.
So that's all flipped in my head, but the majority of people are not like this.
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. They will. Not yet. And that's why I think that coming up on fintech nowadays is important, because this is the generation that needs to set in stone the next steps of what we're doing without paper.
Yeah, I like that, and I think I'm going to be hitting that a lot. The paperless doing anything. I think probably a lot of themes with most fintech companies is there's no paper involved.
Yeah.
Because everybody seems to know today that less paper is better for so many reasons. Environmental, you don't have to be there to sign, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, personally, I use HelloSign for contracts and various other things that make it so I don't have to use paper. Right. So tell me about the actual origin of Dwello. Like, you were in school, or you were in an office. You said you were working in an office.
Well, that was my own office. So I was doing consulting for a while, and we had an office space. We were building out applications for all kinds of people. I was working with a company, Pitney Beau.
Okay, yeah.
Pretty large company.
They like paper.
Yeah, they love paper.
Yeah.
And Casper was working with Easy Financial at the time.
Okay.
And he actually connected to me through two different avenues. So one, when I was working at the bank, I was at Citibank. And one of my old associates, who was a VP at that point, really liked my stuff, and he knew people at Easy Financial, and he connected me through Casper, and as well, Easy Financial was looking for a solution from Pitney Bowes, one of their the software services division, and through that way, we also got connected. So it's like this small world type of thing.
Okay.
Two completely separate segments of life conjoined and brought Casper over to me.
So Casper seems like a key to a lot of things.
He was a key to a lot of things, yeah.
So this is Casper Wong. What's his background?
So his background, he was a lot in large company and financial. He was in mergers and acquisitions with the Bank of Montreal.
Okay, so big finance.
Running big finance with Easy Financial. So it's on the large side of things, on the very corporate side of things.
But he seems to be more of a visionary into the fintech.
Yeah, so he's young, a bunch of us here, and he likes the idea of the innovation. So he looks at things just like the rest of us. He looks at things and then sees that there are things that are deficient. And the one thing that we both agreed on was that the idea of checks for rentals was very archaic.
And this is all just through brainstorming?
Yeah,
or
a little bit of brainstorming, a little bit of Casper did have experience that pain point because he was a landlord as well. So I experienced a lot of that pain point as a tenant. He experienced that pain point as renting out his space.
We all have this pain, but not everybody says I'm going to make something. They may even want to do something, but I'm going to make a company that makes it better, because I don't know if a lot of us would even know where to start. But you had this idea that you were going to make a company?
Yeah, I think that at that point we were okay, he had the ideas and the background, and I had a lot of the technical experience.
Okay.
And he had the right connections through to the credit bureaus, and that's another aspect of what we want to integrate into our site. And I had the background into credit bureaus as well because of my history with credit card companies and my past life in the banking world.
And is it a matter of just knowing who to talk to at the credit bureaus to talk about integration and reporting? And because that's what you want to do with Dwello, is you want to report payments through to them.
Right.
And currently, do landlords do that at all?
No.
So not even what about the big ones? Do they do that?
No.
So you're paying a landlord regularly. I know, for example, on my credit report, there's my Rogers bill.
Right.
It says that I've paid every 30 days on time for the last, I don't even know how many years.
Decades.
But that's a fraction of what I paid in rent to people.
Correct.
And there's no way for anyone to see, you've paid rent on time for the last 10 years, which I have.
Right.
So this seems like a bit of a game changer to me.
Right. And I think that's an aspect that both me and Casper saw, and we wanted to bring that to the table because both with immigrants coming to Canada, students starting out,
you want to build credit,
and it's the importance of credit in both Canada and the United States. That's one figure that judges your entire history of your entire adult life is
everything
based upon that, those few numbers.
Absolutely. I mean, I know the importance of credit. Just to give you some background, I I had to go through a consumer proposal to my creditors about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that meant taking my debt down from 40,000 to 25, actually 15, sorry, it went down by 25.
Yeah.
But then my credit was ruined.
Right.
For about 7 years.
Right.
And it was just 2 years ago now
Cleared up.
that it finally cleared up.
Yeah.
And throughout that time, I couldn't have any landlord pull my credit report, but it would have been nice to be able to show them something on the credit report if needed. Like, look, the rent is fine. Like, I had this problem with credit and spending, but I've always paid my rent. And I feel like if I would have been in that position to have to show them something, maybe somebody would have given me a chance if they saw that.
Right.
But if they just look at the R7 or R9 rating that I had, no, and the Rogers bill is not going to make a difference to them. But maybe if there was this section of the credit report that had that. So this is a brand new thing. Is anyone else doing this right now?
In Canada, no. We literally had to get TransUnion to develop this.
That's great. This is actually a really great part about Dwello. So let's take it back to Dwello for like the simpleton. What is it? What exactly is the company?
Right.
What can Dwello do for me?
Yeah. So say you bought your first property, or you have like, let's just say you have 5-6 properties, and you're doing okay in business. You made a good amount of money. You've wanted to invest into a bunch of properties, and you're like, okay, this is great, but now managing the payments is like the first 2-3 days of the month. I have to constantly be thinking about either running around to all my tenants and collecting checks, depositing these checks, and worrying about if they bounce or not, and just following up on them, or having somebody like email me money through Interac,
and then it gets lost in your inbox, or
either,
to a different email, and you don't get it, you don't check that one,
or you don't know the password because they change it up on you, or like just all these little issues, and then all these things aren't necessarily tied down to your unit. So obviously with five units, that's like the simple case, but that's just one moment in your life. Like, those are the moments in your life that you can't really get back every single month because you have to run around collecting rent. And that's one headache that we help you get rid of.
So I like that. I don't know if I know that many people who own multiple properties. So what about the people who are the tenants in those properties? What is the benefit for them? What does Dwello do for them?
Right. So, I mean, right now, people still are emailing money every single month.
Yes, I do that.
Yep. So emailing money, or worse, trying to get your unit, you have to write a check for first and last.
First and last, post-dated checks. These are all antiquated things. So what will Dwello do for me instead?
So it completely gets rid of that process. You just need to verify your bank account, and your monthly payments come out every single month as scheduled. You can do one-time payments very similar to Interac, for cheaper than Interac, and they just come and go. As long as you're approved by either side, you can request money or send money as need be between you and your landlord.
What about the regular payments? Does that cost me anything, like if I'm paying every monthly to a landlord?
We are working on getting that to free this year.
So free for the tenant?
Well, it is free for the tenant, period. Right
okay,
now.
So always free for the tenant.
For the
tenant.
The
landlord pays the cost.
The landlord currently pays the cost.
Yeah.
We are looking to move to something that's even more cost effective, so that it's brainless for them to do so. Yeah.
And so you're saying you're working towards that for the landlord?
Yeah, for the landlord, yeah.
And so what would that entail?
So that would entail that every single month the tenant would get the money taken out of their account, and then the landlord would get the full amount deposited into their account after a couple days to verify.
Yeah.
But we do want to make it easy for the first time landlord. Like, one thing that we do provide a service for is for the people that have one property.
Okay.
Right? And a lot of people, like, none of these companies, none of our competitors out there currently support like one or two properties. They really want like 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 properties in order for you to use our system.
So this is a great segue. So let's talk about your competitors. So I read about one, a Canadian one called Rent Moolah.
Yep.
Is that the only other Canadian company that does this?
No, there's like Tenant Pay, and there's
Tenant
I think
Pay.
Rent Post. And
See, and these didn't come up in my searches. Well, I didn't search that hard for them. But they're not making it to the top of Google. Rent Moolah did.
Yeah.
Oh, and so why do we need more than one company like this? And maybe you just answered it because they're going for different clients.
Yeah, they're going for larger clients. We want to focus as well to have a commercial side of things to make like malls and stuff like that through the business side, to have that aspect of it also be taken care of, because I think the property managers there experience more of the pain points than
Yes.
even the residential sides do.
So this is like someone who owns a mini mall or
Yeah, like-
something like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
and they have to collect from all of the units.
Yeah.
But what I like that I heard from you just a little bit earlier was about the credit reporting, and this so Rentmula doesn't do this.
No, they do a separate reward system. So
Yeah. What do you think of that reward system that
I
they
mean,
have? Is that something you're going for as well?
no, I don't think I don't think that people should be rewarded, so to speak, by paying the rent. I mean, I get why they need to incentivize people to use credit cards to pay their rent.
Yeah.
If they're if they want to pay $25-$30 more per month on their rent, they need to be incentivized to get something out
They're
of
going to
it.
get something, because
Right.
when you go with Renmula, you're not just playing. Well, first of all, the tenant doesn't pay anything with you, but does the tenant pay
The
something?
tenant pays 100% of the credit card.
Yeah, so you're basically with them. You're loading stuff onto a credit card and then paying your landlord via that. Is that how
Right,
it goes?
yeah.
And then you get all these benefits that are supposed to be equivalent to.
Well, it's kind of like perks, right? Like
Yeah.
like air miles type
Sure,
of things,
okay.
right? Or Uber credits or
Because
whatever.
I went to the Renmula side, and it was really confusing to me as to what was happening. So is this what fintech is all about? Like, I wanted to ask you your opinion on this, because is it like, oh, come and use our new awesome system and we'll do rewards and we'll integrate all this stuff, and I'm still trying to figure out what Coho is.
Yeah.
I signed up for them. I still don't know what they are. They keep telling me they're not a bank. That's important, apparently. Nobody knows that they need Dwello yet. They
Right.
they think that they need it. They don't, or Renmula. They know, but they don't think that there's anything they can do about it, right?
Well-
So how do you get in landlords' heads and say, hey, your tenants hate sending you email money transfers, and that you wait 4 days to actually deposit in your bank account, and then the other end of it, they hate that you wait a whole week for the post-dated check that you asked them for ahead of
Yeah.
time. Is it up to the tenants to be doing all the groundwork here to say, hey, landlords, wake up?
I think it's on both sides, because I mean, landlords, like especially newer landlords, people that have been doing it for 15 years. Like I was talking with another consultant earlier that deals a lot in real estate space. These people that have been doing real estate for umpteen years,
Yeah.
they're used to their processes. It's like, this is the way that it goes, right? And they don't understand, or they don't even take in the concept that there's a new/better way of doing something that they've been doing for so many years.
This
exactly the
way
same
works for them, and
Right.
there's nothing, if it ain't broke, don't fix it,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And is that just along the whole fintech line and startups in general, is that kind of the mentality that is really the biggest struggle for fintech companies or other startups, that you're hitting heads with people who are like, why are you trying to fix this thing that isn't broken?
Right. I think that it's a little bit on. It's more on the regulation side.
Oh,
So
okay,
you run
yeah.
into when you run into money and you're doing money things. A lot of times you end up running into government regulators that want to make sure that whatever transactions are happening are either being taxed properly, being monitored properly, not going to terrorism or like funding
Sure.
other things,
Yeah.
or funneling money out of the country or funneling money into the country.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of things around fintech that are like just generally slowed down by regulation. In terms of adoption, I think that because people are again set in their ways, they like the idea. The new generation of people that are coming up like the idea of self-empowerment. So as this generation of like millennials and like people like the kids of the baby boomers start growing up, you're gonna see that there's a lot of people that want to push this change because they want to empower themselves with all this new internet knowledge that they can Google up whenever they want and do stuff without involving a bank, without, paying ridiculous fees every single month for something that they know a system's doing, and they want to be able to take control of their lives and their money.
Yeah,
So,
that's me. I'm right on the end of the millennials. I
Yeah.
was born in 1980, but I have all of that stuff that the millennials have.
Right.
It's like that's what drives me. Anything that can make things better in terms of technological, I'm all for it. Right.
Yeah, that's why companies like Wealthsimple and stuff like that coming up are like really like they're appealing to a growing segment of the market.
If I always pay my landlord on time and he always cashes his check and deposits his Interact e-transfer on time, what is the benefit for us to switch over to Dwello?
So the big part is, yes, it's going to be that credit bureau reporting side. So when TransUnion finishes their testing, there's going to be, I think, a big switch in terms of mentality about how to improve your credit history. Like the traditional way of improving your credit was to take out a credit card, start buying stuff on it, and start paying it off type of thing. And it's just very consumerist, very like not necessity, right? It's just doing stuff like by having a credit card company make money off of the vendors that you end up spending stuff off of. It sounds really counterintuitive, but the more money that they make out of it, the better that your credit rating ends up being, or the more interest that you pay, so to speak.
I feel like this is like really game changing. I think I said that earlier. Like this is a big deal to me.
Yeah.
I read about something about credit reporting, on your site, but I didn't really clue into how much of a difference this makes. Like I've spent a lot of time with the credit reporting agencies, and they've been the same for a long time.
Yes, that's an aspect that because we have some ins with TransUnion to be able to talk with them and say, okay, this is they're doing it in the States already. Like there's companies that are doing the credit reporting side in the States. They want to bring this into Canada. They're run as completely separate bureaus. They have that precedent to say, okay, this makes sense, and we want to more accurately determine who is a good credit customer, right? And that's almost a segue into our next level of intelligence, which we're building in as an add-on to our platform. Actually, a separate end of our platform, which I think is even more interesting than just
what is
credit
it?
bureaus by itself. So we're building out Dwello.
I'm so curious right now.
Yeah, so we're building out Dwello Score. So it's
Okay.
essentially a scoring platform that doesn't just take into consideration your credit bureau. It also takes, similar to Mint, it takes your banking history and
like it.
how much you're paid versus the cost of the unit, and how much you're spending, and all these factors that NSFs, etc. Taking all these factors and then boiling it down into
Kind of a risk you
a
are.
kind of a risk score that's
Wow.
a little bit more advanced than just a credit bureau by itself. Because a credit bureau, like you could say, okay, if you have one credit card on your account and you pay, a $500 credit card every single month, and so you're making, $110,000 a year,
Sure.
it's great. But if you're spending $100,000 of it on cars and stuff, it's going to be a poor indicator of how much you can afford a particular unit.
I like this a lot because the credit reporting system there's a lot of holes in it. It's kind of flawed in a way, and people are stuck on this is the only way to evaluate someone's creditworthiness.
Right.
And I like that on the surface it looks like you're just helping people pay rent or collect rent.
Yeah.
But really you're really using it to change the face of credit. Or credit assessment anyway.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a really good thing because it would work for people who have great cash flow. Maybe they just don't like credit cards.
Yeah.
Maybe they just like to live on cash. I know people who
Yeah.
just like to live on cash, and they feel compelled to get a credit card because that's the only way.
Or, like your example, living off of CCS for 7 years, if you've been great for 4, there's one R7 that sits on your account
That's
is
right.
going to ding you way more than what accurately has happened the last 4 years.
And the fact is, during half of that 7 years, I was cash positive, no debt, probably a better risk than most of the people out there
Right.
with a better credit rating than me.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's that one aspect of it that's having this score based in, and of course this is all for tenant, like for based around the idea that you want to make sure that you have a good tenant on your system.
Yeah.
That's the driving force, because right now the way that current landlords are doing it, it's very expensive and it's not as accurate as something that's universal that we can put together will be.
That's awesome. So I like the idea that Dwello takes email money transfers and check costs that the tenant currently pays. I mean, I pay a dollar.
Yeah.
Dollar doesn't seem like anything, but I guess it's $12 a year.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
It's all. I think that amount's all trivial, anyways. Like anything
Sure.
that's under a coffee or like
Yeah.
a ticket a year.
But it does add up. But I like the idea that a dollar does mean more to a student paying rent than it means to a landlord collecting rent.
Right.
And currently, the tenant is paying all of the fees.
Right.
And the landlord is collecting the money and not having to pay fees. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So my question is, do you see yourself as kind of like taking from the rich and giving to the poor, Robin Hood type for the rental income industry, I guess?
Well, I mean, if you consider $12 a year, like, Robin Hooding.
That could be
It could be something.
a nice dinner for a
Yeah,
student.
That's true. McDonald's ones.
That's exactly.
Right? I think it's not really the Robin Hood. I think that we, like, very similar to, like, even when I do photography, stuff like that, right? Like, I mean, I do a lot of, like, art-based photography for all kinds of different people, but the people that should be charged for these services are the corporations.
Yes.
Like, these are the people that, like, there's a lot of people that trade stuff back and forth, and there's, like, starving artists, starving photographers, starving models, starving makeup artists, starving clothing stylists. Everywhere is just trying to struggle, when the people that are actually making the money at the end of this are the corporations that are doing the advertising, the people that are, like, that create these products and mass market them to overseas and online and have the money to be able to do all these things. They're the people that are holding all this money. So very similarly, the property managers and the landlords, they're the people that have, like, this investment. Even though it's a paltry amount, I think that if somebody were to foot the bill, those people, that's a part of their cost of doing business. Whereas it shouldn't be, like, paying rent is enough. I think that the extra, even if it's 0.5% of somebody having to pay an extra fee, even just to get a $50 checkbook from the bank, right? That's just that one stupid thing that they shouldn't really need to worry about.
I only get about 0.25% interest on my checking account, but I get interest on my checking account. Right. It's that concept that is better than I don't even care how much ends up in my account. The fact that I don't have to pay to have a checking account and I get some money for having one, that's what it is. And so I think the fact that you take the costs down to zero, it doesn't really matter what they were. You can say, now you can rent something for the cost of the rent, and you don't have to worry about ancillary costs. And I think that's a really great thing that you're doing. I think the last thing I want to ask you specifically, in the paper lately, there was this guy, this professional tenant.
Yeah.
And right now the rental system is set up to protect the tenant, which is good for most people, but not good for people who are totally ready to abuse the system by going to rent a place and then when it comes time to pay rent saying, no, I'm not going to, and then the landlord has to go through all of this rigmarole to get them out, when it's obvious the person is doing it on purpose.
Right.
So what Does Dwello be able to do anything to stop this kind of person from starting this kind of thing?
Yes, to some degree. I mean, the power of having like the TransUnion risk score, for example, in addition to what we're doing with Dwello score, it provides more metrics to your landlord, more than just just a dollar figure and stuff like that. It shows you how often you've moved, for example,
I like
over
that.
the last number of years.
That's important.
If you're bouncing around a whole bunch of places, then it's going to look a little bit more suspect. I mean, there's going to be places that are going to be willing to take this risk
Sure.
on, but you keep it in the back of your head, right? And if they and especially if you're collecting stuff using your fees using EFTs, you're not using a check. Nobody's gonna sit there and put a stop payment on a check.
Yeah, so that's the that seems like the safest thing to me. If they agree when they sign up with the agreement, what power does the tenant have to go back and say, well, now I don't want to pay that? Are they allowed to go back and stop it? Do they have to go through a whole bunch of process?
No, they can pause a payment, right? But everybody's going to get notified of this type of thing. And as well, it depends, and we're still figuring out the intricacies of this. But it may show up on your bureau that was not a completed contract.
I see. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if it works that way with the current lease with someone. I mean, it would work after a while, I guess.
A broken lease?
A broken lease that shows up like that. But this seems like it's a lot harder to stop than just deciding not to pay your rent.
Right.
When people sign agreements with a third party, there's now one. I think Dwello, you're not really enforcing, but you are. Is that
well? What we want to do is empower the landlord or property manager to have the right information to know that this is taking place or has taken place for this person, or to have certain amounts of risk, like be willing to take a certain amount of risk on. Right, when you have somebody that's signed on for $4,000 a month, like this professional tenant guy was, you tend to want to be able to pay a little bit. Like we're working with a company also here at the DMZ's insurance. We want to make sure that landlords have the opportunity to buy, for example, deposit insurance. Right, so if you want to spend $15 a month more to guarantee that your rent is going to come in for the next X number of months, despite if the guy bounces on you, right? Then that's worth it for a lot of these people, but
sure,
like especially mom and pop landowners,
because
right?
they need that cash flow.
They need that cash flow,
and it's worth the extra cost.
Right.
So the small percentage, 1 or 2%, say that they have to pay.
Exactly, and for the landlord, I think that because they're the people that are most at risk, but they also stand to gain the most out of it. These are the things that we want to add onto our platform to make sure that both landlords and tenants are really happy with the product that they're getting.
Good. All of the add-ons that you're talking about sound really great, and I'm glad that they're not like free Starbucks or anything like that. So,
I mean,
not that there's anything wrong with getting rewards, but it just seems like, I don't know, it doesn't fit for me, right? I personally, I'm not going to go somewhere and sign up for something because I get a reward for it. Maybe a cash reward,
right? But
I think what's way more valuable is the stuff you're talking about. A new way of looking at credit, an improved credit score based on rent. This stuff is really good, and I'm glad that I came here to talk to you about this.
Yeah.